Thank you. Mr. Chairman, a lot of discussion. Is this a good deal? Is this a bad deal? It's not our job here to grade the President of the United States or his predecessors. That's the job of talk show hosts, pundits, ultimately historians. Our job here is to guide the House of Representatives. How can the House make a positive contribution to this nation's foreign policy under today's conditions, not the conditions that existed a month ago or a year ago? A month ago when we left Washington, some believed that the House and the Senate might immediately affect our foreign policy under the Corker bill by passing a binding resolution of disapproval over the President's veto and preventing the President from delivering some portion of the sanctions relief promised in Vienna. Whether that was ever in the cards then, we know it's not in the cards now. The House cannot prevent the President from delivering the sanctions relief called for by the agreement. 34 senators, with 7 to spare, have already announced their position. Now, we might want to live in a fantasy world. In my fantasy world, the Ayatollah is about to convert to Christianity. In the fantasy world of others, a joint resolution of disapproval is about to be passed over the President's veto by both houses by a two-thirds majority. We're not here to live in a fantasy world. What are the points we can all agree on? Believe it or not, there are points, and this has been a contentious debate, we can all agree on. First, as I pointed out, this deal is going to go into effect for the next year and a half. Whether it goes through after a veto or before a veto, the world will not remember for very long. The second thing we can all agree on is that the nuclear safeguards in this deal are much better in this decade than they are next decade. We know what America's foreign policy will be until 2017. We do not know what is in our national interest in 2017 or 2027. As Admiral Fallon said, there's just no way to know. So the greatest contribution this House can make is to preserve America's freedom of action, dealing with circumstances we cannot predict. Even if you love this deal, the greatest proponents don't say there's a guarantee that it represents our best national interest next decade. And even if you hate this deal, you do not know what will be in our national interest next decade. What we need is freedom of action. The threat to our freedom of action is that we're the good guys. We follow international law. If something's binding, we feel bound. The House can make one contribution, and that is to demonstrate to the American people and the world that this is not a binding agreement. Now, that has the additional advantage of being true. It is not binding on America under the United States Constitution. And in the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, this is the lowest possible executive handshake. It's not a ratified treaty. It's not an unratified treaty. It's not an executive legislative agreement. So we've got to have the clearest possible message that this agreement is not binding on the President and not binding on Congress. We are scheduled to deal with a resolution of disapproval, which, as I pointed out, will not, even if it passes, and that's problematic in the Senate, it will be vetoed. Ultimately, it will be defeated. Maybe only by 34% of one House, but it will be defeated. There are 3 other approaches we could take that would make a clearer statement. We could have a concurrent resolution of disapproval that doesn't go to the President's desk. We could have a House resolution of disapproval that doesn't even go to the Senate. Or we could vote on, as provided in the Corker bill, on a resolution of approval, and it would be voted down. Those would be clearer statements than where we're headed now, which is ultimately a victory for the proponents of the deal. But I don't run the House. None of us on this side of this aisle run the House. We will vote on those matters that are brought to the floor. And we've got to vote in a way that preserves freedom of action. The President has the freedom of action for the rest of his term. That's guaranteed by the votes in the Senate. Now we have to preserve freedom of action for future presidents under future circumstances. I yield back.
We go now to Joe Wilson of South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Ranking Member Elliott Engel, the courage that you've had over the last month as the American people find out more about this deal. They find out how dangerous it is, the thought of that there would be self-inspection. It's inconceivable of putting the American people at risk, putting the Middle East at risk, putting our military at risk. And I have 4 sons currently serving the military today. And so it's, I take it personally that indeed our American military is put at risk by working with a country that provided the IEDs that killed so many of our troops. And how we can forget 1983, the attack on the Marine barracks in Beirut, which was a direct attack by Iran, killing nearly 300 Marines. And people should know that that bomb explosion was the largest explosive device since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then just 3 years ago, this regime, a murderous regime, was attempting to blow up and kill the ambassador from Saudi Arabia to the United States. And so for us to be dealing with Islamo-fascists as if they're trustworthy is utterly inconceivable. There has been one highlight to me, though, of this debate right here. I had the opportunity to be here with Senator Joseph Lieberman. This is bipartisan. He expressed heartfelt belief that the deal should be defeated and that it should be overridden. And I had the opportunity to be with him in New York. And so as I think back to where we are, and General Wall, a concern that I have is that